One of the best gifts I was ever given by Jesus was ambition. Now, I mean, if my 18-year-old self could see me now, he'd be like, you gotta be kidding. Seriously? Like, you're doing that? I can't believe it. Like, that's crazy, right? Because I was so pathetically afraid. I was so low risk. And so Jesus got a hold of me and he started casting vision from my life and saying I could actually do something significant in my life. And I was so afraid. And I was an artist, which, that doesn't really go well because you actually have a microphone, but you won't use it, And so I was a closet artist, and, I would play if they really begged me, close your eyes, I'm going to play something, or whatever, play the piano or stuff. I got a hold of Jesus, and I started writing all these songs. All these things started coming out of me naturally. I wrote 50 songs. And I ended up doing concerts and traveling and doing some stuff. And, I never recorded one single song because I found out as I was figuring out my faith, how to mesh this spirituality with this fear. And it was all combobulated, and I ended up learning this horrible philosophy. It was like, I perform for an audience of one. That's what I do. And I learned this philosophy for the Christian culture that you perform for an audience of one. And it's like, oh, that's right. Yeah. I wore that like a badge. That's it. That's my out. I can hide underneath this philosophy. I perform for an audience of one. It sounds amazing. Me, Jesus, sitting there, performing my stuff, giving my all to just Jesus. Kind of stupid, right? If you think about it. I mean, if Jesus is the only one who shows up to your performance, it's got to be really bad. Do you think about that? It's like your mom. She's the only one who shows up, and she's like, Mijo, go ahead. Tia Gloria couldn't come. She had work, but I'm here. What? It's got to be really bad, but it was such an excuse for me. I didn't want to do anything ambitious because I was so afraid still in my life as I was getting hold of this and God was breaking me free from it. I was running from any kind of possible rejection. If I took my art seriously, well, then people would take me seriously. If they took me seriously, well, they would say what I was most afraid that might be true. My art was worthless. My music was worthless because I was worthless. I didn't want to admit that to myself, and so I just spiritualized those things. And I lived under this false humility. The false humility versus true humility? False humility versus true humility. How do you know if it's false humility? The way you know is you have to ask yourself, where's the focus? If the focus is you, it's always false humility. I'm just too bad, I'm not going to do it, whatever, or I'm better than everybody. It's still, the conversation is still about you. And you can't break through from it. And so I was trapped inside of that. And I came to Mosaic, and Pastor Irwin really helped me understand that my gifts were given to me, but they're not for me. Your gifts are given to you, but they're not for you. It's not about you. You didn't do anything to earn those. God just dropped those in your lap. You have those things to serve the world. That's why you have the gifts and talents that you have to do something significant in the world. And I got a hold of that. And you know what happened? I ended up being part of 2 worship albums here at Mosaic in the early days, the ones that shall not be mentioned. Before MSC, Carlos, Carlos wasn't even born yet. But I got a chance to be part of that. Somehow, God seems to reclaim what we bury. Wow. Isn't that beautiful? The very desires, God in His grace and His creativity bring those things back. And I got to actually be part of an album. You will never hear it, but I got to be a part of it. And God reclaimed that for my life. And I've been so grateful for Mosaic and what it's given me a chance. And I would love to sit here today and just say to you, before you stands a confident man. I've conquered all that. But it's just a performance. I still struggle with self-doubt. How about you? I still have to repent and ask God to forgive me for worshiping the Lord of self-doubt. Where I abdicate my power and I don't show up for things because I'm too small in my life. How about you? But there's a Lord of lords, a King of kings, Jesus at the highest place. It just says, come on up. Come to the highest place. Have you noticed that faith is always like an uphill walk? The walk of faith is always uphill. Yeah. I mean, I wish patience was like a downhill motion. It would just happen like, hey, I'm just patient. And you can't ever be cool when you're walking downhill. You try to be cool, but gravity takes over, right? And it's just like, I'm just comfortably patient. I never stand here. This is kind of cool. You're comfortable in those things. I'm comfortably courageous. Just happening. Comfortable with it, I'm not even trying to be courageous, No, you have to go uphill to be courageous. You have to be uphill to serve someone else. You have to be uphill to exercise self-control and be kind. You have to think through that. It takes work. Why? Because he's calling us to the highest place. He's calling us up to be at that place that he actually stands and a part of. He is the highest place, but he chooses the lowest role. It's fascinating. How can the God that we serve at the highest place choose the lowest role? It makes no sense. See, if you believe in a higher power, whether it be the universe or nature or music, you will think that your highest place is talking more and more, is taking more and more for yourself. The highest goal in the universe is to give to you. And I know, it's colored with yes, and, serve other people. But the ultimate goal of the universe is to give to you. This is why it totally breaks down. The ultimate goal for Jesus was not to receive, it was to give. It was to serve. It was this beautiful portrayal. And he says it in this astounding moment. I mean, Jesus comes as a baby. He's raised as a carpenter, wears the same clothes that he teaches in. He washes our dirty, stinking feet, and then he dies with criminals, completely misunderstood as a God that listened to insults as he was dying and taking his last breath. Jesus lived the human story of planet-shaking humility, and we misunderstood him. You know why? We had never experienced this level of love from a God before.